Hello, welcome back to RC Video Reviews. Today we're going to take a stroll through the radio setup options on the Radiomaster TX16s. Well, so far on the channel we've gone through about 7 different tutorials on the Radiomaster TX16s, and in no particular order. We've covered plane setup, we've done mixes, global variables, dynamic dual rates, global functions, setting up FrSky S6R and S8R receivers, and the last one I did was how to update the firmware. Today I want to cover one of the more basic aspects of the Radiomaster TX16s, and that's the radio setup itself. So we'll start by powering on the radio. Okay, now that the radio is powered up, to get into the radio settings, we press and hold the system button, and that'll bring us into this screen that's got several folders. Just like your browser, it's got several windows up here on the top that you can toggle through. And we're just going to go through them one by one, and I'm going to show you a couple of pro tips. So you want to stick with the video and watch, because I'm going to show you some secret things that you can do. Alright, I'm going to start out by talking a little bit about tools, and this is one of the really nice features of OpenTX, is that there's this concept called Lua scripting. What Lua scripts do is they allow you to interact over the air with devices in your plane. For example, FrSky puts out a gas suite sensor that monitors information on internal combustion engines. So if you wanted to run a Lua script to make changes to those sensors, you could run the Lua script right from this tools menu. And then earlier, I showed in the FrSky S6R video how you can change the parameters of an SXR receiver using this script. But here's the thing, what if you don't want all these? Like, I don't fly gas, and I'm never going to fly gas, so here's one of the first pro tips I'm going to show you. If you don't want one of these tools in here, let me show you how to get rid of it. So you can see number 2 is FrSky GA Suite. I don't want that, so I'm going to navigate to the next screen over, or the next tab over, and that's the SD card. From the SD card home screen, we're going to go down to Scripts and then Tools. And you'll notice inside the Tools folder, we've got a list of scripts that are populated on that Lua Tools tab. So the GA Suite Lua and GA Suite Lua C, I won't use those, so I'm going to get rid of them. I'll highlight them by long pressing and then clicking delete, and then I'll get rid of the Lua C. I'll long press and click delete. And here's the thing, don't worry about making a mistake, because if you do, you can always repopulate this folder from the stock SD card contents folder, and I showed you how to get access to that in the update firmware video. So now that we've deleted those two, let's go back, and you can see that in my list of tools, the FrSky gas suite has been removed. So if there are Lua scripts in this screen that you don't want to use, get rid of them. You can delete them. Or you can leave them alone, because they're not hurting anything. All right, one other thing that I want to show you that's really cool if you haven't figured it out. When I first saw this, I saw Spectrum INT, and I thought, oh, that's something to do with configuring Spectrum receivers. And of course the spelling's wrong. And I don't have any Spectrum receivers yet, so I just kind of ignored this one. Well, I finally clicked on it and checked this out. It's got a little spectrum analyzer. This is giving you a little bit of information about the radio noise floor in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. So you can see I've got a little bit of noise around this 2440 mark, but other than that, my floor is kind of quiet. Anyway, just kind of a neat little thing to see if you have a noisy RF environment before you fly. Okay, that covers the tools menu. Let's look at the SD card next. And what I want to show you in the SD card structure is that if you plug the radio into your computer, this is the list of folders that you see. So you can come in and navigate and add and delete things. So here, I'll give you one example. Let's say there's a screenshot that I took that I don't want to see anymore. You can highlight that. I don't know what the deal is with these inverted colors. I don't know why it's not a full color preview, but it's not. Let's say I don't want that screenshot anymore. I can long press the jog dial and I get an option to delete. And then the double ellipses here just basically go back up one folder. That's all that does. And there are no double ellipses on this screen because I'm already at the root folder of the SD card. Okay, so this is just a way where you can look and see if you put a file, for example, on your SD card, you can look and see if that file was populated. So here's a picture of my Millennium Master that I took, and I can see by navigating around that it's definitely on that SD card. So just a little file browser, nice little utility. All right, the next option, this is the meat and potatoes of the thing, and I will spend a little bit of time in here. So under radio setup date, I think that's self-explanatory. Time, self-explanatory. The battery meter range, the reason this is important and you want to set this is because this gives the meter on your widgets the range to use for displaying the power level of your battery. All right, so by describing that range on the battery, the icon knows how many of these little bars it should display. So it's just a good idea to go ahead and set that based on what your battery option should be. I'm using a Li-ion battery, the Radiomaster Li-ion battery, and I set my range between 6.4 and 8.4. Okay, sound options. You have a couple of different things you can select in here. So first thing under mode, right now I've got sound set to all, which is why you hear beeping for everything I do. But I can say, well, I don't want to hear sounds for my keys, so you can set this to be no key, and now as I navigate through the system there are no beeps. Or you can also say, I don't want sounds for anything but alarm, and now the only thing you'll hear sounds for is if there's, say, an RSSI warning, or you turn the radio off while you're still plugged into a model, that kind of thing. Or you can completely silence it, which you might choose to do that as well. That's up to you. So I use the mode all because I do these demo videos and I like you guys to be able to hear as I navigate. The volume slider here is master volume for all of these parameters or all of these items in this list. But what's interesting is that doesn't control the overall volume of the radio. So if I turn the radio up with my volume knob, my S1, now I'll turn it down. Even though the volume is still all the way up here, the radio itself is turned down. So anyway, no harm in setting it all the way to the top, and then you'll be sure to get all the different noises that you want to hear on your radio. Okay, the next one is the beep volume, and that controls how loud the tones are when you move or activate a switch or a control or a button. So I'm going to slide this one all the way up, and you can hear now that's quite loud. So I wouldn't leave it that way operationally. Down here, low is good by me. You can also control the beep length and the pitch. So if you want your beeps to be real short, you can make them short, and if you want your pitch to be real high, you can set it all the way up to 300. And it just changes the way the radio sounds as you navigate. So the wave volume controls primarily the audible alerts you get from the radio based on what you have set up throughout the configuration. Okay, the last option is background volume, and that controls the volume of background music that you might want to play on the radio. And there is an option to do that. You can assign it to a switch if you want, and you can put MP3s on the radio and have it play music while you're flying. I've never really bothered with that, but that's what that's for. So I'll leave mine down at 0, and then we'll take a look quickly at variometer. I don't have a variometer and I have no experience configuring it, but the same principles will apply. So if you have a variometer in your plane, you can raise or lower the volume, change the pitch max, and change the repeat. So that's all that is if you have a variometer sensor in the plane. Okay, the next section is the haptic section, and you can set this to be quiet, which will give you no haptic feedback at all. You can set it for alarms only. The no key option just turns haptic feedback off when you're navigating buttons and dials. And that to me is where I like to leave mine. If you turn it on to all, then every time you move a button or a knob or press something, you get haptic feedback. And that's just, to me, I don't like that. So I set mine to no key. And then you can control the strength and length of the haptic feedback with these two sliders. So just play with it and find the one that you like the best. You just click and scroll and you'll figure out which one you like the best. Okay, for alarms, on battery low, I set mine for 6.8 volts, and remember this is a 2-cell battery, and at low voltage of 3.4 volts per cell, that's how I came up with 6.8. So 6.8 volts per cell for a 2-cell battery makes sense. And then for inactivity alarm, that's if you set the radio down and you don't touch it, you don't move the dials, maybe you forgot to turn it off, you can change that value. You can change that value in here. You can set it to 1 minute. I set mine for 10. These batteries are so strong these days that 10 minutes for me is just fine. Okay, the sound off option basically turns off sounds for alarms. I think that's probably a bad idea, and if you turn this into the quiet mode or sound off mode, you won't get any warnings. So you won't get any battery warnings or RSI warnings or anything. So I think that's probably a bad idea. All right, check RSSI and shutdown. The reason I leave this checked is because if you have an RSSI signal from a receiver and you turn your radio off while your airplane is still powered, the radio will say, hey, wait a minute, you still have an airplane plugged in. Are you sure you want to turn your receiver off? That's just a safety feature, and I think it's very thoughtful, very cool actually. So I do leave that set to on. All right, for backlight mode, you can turn it completely off. So you just saw that with my screen going dim there. You can turn it on with keys only, which would be things like the navigation buttons, the system and model buttons, the jog dial, that will activate the backlight. You can set it to be controls only, which would be things like your sticks and your potentiometers. Or you can set it to both, so the backlight will activate no matter what you're using. So this is a purely subjective option. You can choose whatever you want. I leave mine on both because, again, the batteries are so good these days that I can easily get a full flying day without ever having to worry about running these batteries out. Or you can just turn it to on, so no matter what you're doing, the backlight is on. So I set mine to both. I set the duration to 1 minute, and after a minute, what will happen is the screen will go dim, and I'll show you by setting it down as low as I can, 5 seconds. Watch what happens. There's bright, and there's dim. And then you can control the brightness and the off brightness by using this dial down here. So if you set this all the way down to nothing, the screen doesn't actually go off, but it gets pretty dark. Okay, so that's all that does. I'm going to set mine back up to 10 seconds, and I'm going to set my off brightness up just a little bit. Okay, the next one, alarm, allows the screen brightness to come on if there's an alarm issued on the radio. Okay, power off delay. This is actually a cool little feature, and I think I've never really, I don't really know for a fact why they implemented things this way, but I have a feeling it has to do with safety. So if you have if you reach up and press the power button and say, oh, wait a minute, I didn't mean to turn the radio off, that's a mistake, you can let go and the radio will stay on. So if you press and hold it for a full second, the radio goes off. So you can change that power off delay so that you have to hold the power button longer. Let's set it to 3 seconds. So now you'll notice when I hit the power button, I have to hold it for 3 seconds before the radio actually goes off. 1001, 1002, 1003. Get it? Okay, personally, I've never had a concern with accidentally turning my radio off, so I set this down to be the lowest value I can. Actually, 0. Huh, I've never tried 0. Instantaneous. All right, for me, I like a delay of 1 second. So that's where I leave my power off delay at 1 second. Again, purely subjective. You can set it for however you want. Okay, GPS. This applies if you have a GPS in the radio. The radio does not come with a GPS installed, but you can add one. You can add a U-Blox GPS and solder it to the Bluetooth pads, and when you do that, you can have GPS functionality that'll document things like the pilot's position and the time. So I don't have GPS in this one, so we're going to skip over that. The coordinated format, this is the format of the GPS coordinates that get logged by the device. Okay, country code, choose the one that's appropriate for you. Language, one that's appropriate for you. Units, the one that's appropriate for you. And here's a pro tip. This is a very cool feature. When I looked at this, I thought, well, I wonder what the heck that's for. And I played around with it for a while and did a little Googling, and I figured it out. It's actually a very cool function. Okay, on this plane I have 3 different rates set up. I've got high, medium, and low, and I'm going to let you listen to them so you can hear them. So I'm going to switch into middle and then low.
Middle rates, low rates.
Okay, now that's normal expected operation, but what if I'm flying and I want to go from low to high? I don't want to hear middle, then high. That's what this option is for. By putting a play delay in here, what it does, it allows the play of a middle switch position track to be ignored for this period of time. So check this out. I'm in high rates right now. I'm just going to flip down to low.
Low rates.
You see how it just ignored middle?
High rates. Low rates.
Instead of
Middle rates. High rates.
there you go. That's what that's for. That's a pro tip. Very cool little feature. I love that. That again, It just shows how creative these OpenTX developers are. That's a great feature, and I really like it. I'm glad they did that. Because it used to be, I'd use my mode switch for my stabilizer.
Stabilization on attitude mode.
So I'll say I'm in attitude mode and I want to go to stabilizer off.
Stabilization off.
I don't want to hear the middle one that's the stabilizer on, and before that's what you used to get. So again, really nice feature. Very cool feature. Okay, USB mode. Here's another little pro tip. You can either set this to be joystick or storage. So if you want to use your radio as a joystick, and by the way, it does work. I tried it. If you find my free flight simulator video, this radio works with a USB cable as a joystick on that free flight simulator. So if you want to play around with that, you can. So I was able to use the radio as a joystick and fly on a simulator. But you can either have the radio prompt you, or you can set it to joystick or storage. So I set mine to ask because I don't know. Sometimes I might want to use it as a joystick. Sometimes I might want to have it open up the storage folder so I can put things on the SD card. And then here at the bottom we can change our channel order. You've probably heard me say a dozen times, I like AETR for mine. That's the way I've been flying since I started. And I'm also mode 2, which shows rudder and throttle on the left over here, and elevator and aileron on the right over here. Okay, that's the main radio setup, and we've only got a few more tabs to go. Global functions I covered in a separate video, so I'm not going to spend any time on that in this one. Make sure you check out the global functions video if you want to learn more about what these do. Okay, the trainer options. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on trainer other than to cover what this does. So when you connect a trainer radio and you put this model into master mode and connect another radio to the trainer port, this allows you to decide what happens on a given interface. So aileron, elevator, let's just do aileron. If I click on that, I can say that when the student is operating, and I have the switch active for the student, when the student's operating, we're both controlling. That's what the plus and equals means. If I set it to colon equals, that means what I have on my radio overrides whatever the student's doing. I don't know as a flight instructor if I'd want a mode where we could both have an input, because if I take over, I want to take over. So I don't know how I would use that, but that's what it does. Okay? And then you can do that for all of the interfaces: aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. On the hardware tab, we have an option to do a calibration and to name our sources. For me, I recommend not naming them in these fields, because if you do, you lose this icon as an input. But for calibration, let's just run through a calibration real quick, because you need to do this when you set up your radio. I highly, highly advise you do this when you set up your radio. And I'll talk a little bit while I perform this calibration of the proper way to do it. All right, so you can see on the screen it says calibration, press enter to start. So I've pressed enter. Now the instruction says center the sticks, pots, and sliders and press enter. So you want to make sure that your potentiometers and your slider here on the left, your left slider, your right slider, they should be in their detents. Your volume should be in its detent. And I say volume, but I mean S1. And S2 should be at its detent, and your throttle should be at the center position. Okay? Now with everything centered, then we go ahead and press enter. Now it says move sticks, pots, and sliders and press enter. So the idea here is to move it through the full range of motion, but don't press, don't monkey fist it. Okay, you just move it just to the stop and then quit. So there's throttle down, there's throttle up. Again, don't monkey fist it. Now here's rudder right, and here's rudder left. That's all you need to do, and you do that for every control. Elevator down and up, aileron right and left. Now move the sliders through their full range of motion, up and down. Again, don't press hard, just a little bit. Just to the stop and then quit. And then the same thing with your potentiometers up top. Move them through the full range. Go all the way left and then all the way right. And what that does is it describes the mechanical range of each control to the radio in terms of software. Now once you've done that, press enter, and we're done. That's it. Okay, again, don't name these in this column right here. Don't bother doing that. It turns out to be confusing if you do that. Okay, for you eagle eyes out there, you'll notice there's an SI and SJ switch, and those don't exist on the radio, but they are inputs on the circuit board. So you can drill a hole, add a toggle switch, and wire it to the board if you need a couple more switches on your radio for whatever reason. But the radio stops out of the box at SH. All right, the next option for battery calibration, what you want to do here is take a multimeter and measure your battery voltage and then set this to be equal to what your multimeter says. Okay, the RTC battery refers to the real-time clock battery. That's the little watch battery that keeps time on the radio. So mine is at 3.1 to 3.11. Check real-time clock voltage. That's probably a good thing to leave on because the radio will let you know if your voltage on your clock battery is getting low. Serial port TTL, this lets you configure what's happening with the two TTL ports on the bottom of the radio. I'm not going to cover that today because frankly I have no experience using those external TTL and UARTs, but obviously there are some options in here for Lua scripting, S-bus trainer connections, telemetry in for external modules, for example, a telemetry mirror. This is just OpenTX. I haven't explored that far into the radio yet to worry about that, but that's how you configure what's going on with those two ports down on the bottom of the radio. All right, ADC filter. I'll put a link in the description. There's a video out there on YouTube that goes into great detail explaining what this ADC filter is. It stands for analog to digital converter, and the bottom line here is turn it on. And what happens is it smooths out the conversion process, the number of steps that occur between your analog control, like your stick, and the digital representation of that stick input. Watch that video if you want to know more about it. For me, I'm turning mine on. And then finally, down at the bottom, there's an option for debugging analogs, and you'll notice there's a touch panel option right here, and you'll know your touch panel works if you press the screen and you see coordinates. So that's how you know your touch panel is working. When they enable the touch interface on OpenTX, that'll be a really cool option. Okay, then you can see by moving your sticks, you'll see other inputs. This is just a place where you can see what's going on in terms of centering and movement on your analog controls. All right, that's all that is. And then if you want to debug your switches, I did this when I moved my momentary switch over to the other side of the radio. So you can see that I'm hitting the SE switch and that's showing me up, down, and middle. SH, my momentary switch on the left, the SF switch, so that just shows you that everything's working. Here's page up, page down, the enter button. So you can just confirm that your buttons are working. If you're having problems with your buttons, this is where you go to figure it out. Okay, that's it for the hardware screen, and then the next and final screen is the version screen, and I covered this when I showed you how to update your firmware, but you can come in here and look at your firmware version, when the firmware was compiled, and what options you selected when you downloaded the firmware with OpenTX Companion. In my case, I have no heli, and what that means is when I go set up my model, there are no helicopter options. Those are all gone on my radio. That's all I've got on setting up the Radiomaster TX16s. I hope you found that content valuable, and if you did, especially if you're not a subscriber, and by the way, 75% of my views come from non-subscribers. What are you waiting for? Hit the button. You know you come back. Hit the button, subscribe, join the channel. Don't forget to hit the t-shirt store and check out my Amazon affiliate links if you need consumable RC gear. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. That's all I got for today. Take it easy. Hello, welcome back to RC Video Reviews. Today we're going to take a look at the radio setup. Beep. Hello, welcome back to RC Video Reviews. Today we're going to take a walk. Beep. Hello, welcome back to RC Video Reviews. Today we're beep. So if you wanted to run the Lua script to monitor that sensor, so if you beep, 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 things that happen on the radio that you do want to have to, again, lithium ion battery, and then I set an inactivity, no, 6.8, that's 3.4. I feel like my screen timeout is way too short right now, so I'm going to go back and see if I can lengthen that.